everybody, and welcome to this reading for the upcoming 11/11 portal that's happening on the 11th of November. So it's the 11th day of the 11th month, 2020. Now this year is going to be interesting because even though we don't have 11/11/11 in terms of the year, it's still 2020, which is two sets of two, so there's a kind of a mirroring in the numbers 20 and 20, and both break down to a 2, and of course 11 also breaks down to a 2. So this is very much about relationships of all kinds, and the heart chakra itself. So that's what we're going to be looking at, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some of the astrology of this particular week, because it ties in very nicely, and I think will give us another layer when it comes to the energies that are going to be active during this particular week in this portal. And then we're going to pull some I Ching cards, which I've got ready here, just to get messages through with regards to overall themes for this 11/11 gateway. Now, the reason that I use the I Ching is you'll notice that I did it back at the 4/4 Lionsgate portal as well, the 8/8 portal, sorry, is that the I Ching itself, the oracle of the I Ching, lends itself to the idea of portals. In fact, the I Ching starts with the two gates of the so-called creative and the receptive. This is the sort of the primordial yin and yang energies of the dragon in the field. So it starts with that gateway, and then it ends with hexagrams 63 and 64, which are another gateway. That's the sort of gateway going out. So it's similar, I suppose, in a way to the lunar nodes in geomancy, where the head of the dragon is similar to the first gate, the first set of gates, hexagrams 1 and 2, where there's energy coming in, there's the start of new cycles. And then 63 and 64 are similar to the south node of the dragon, which is all about sort of catharsis and endings. So if you see the two together, you could say that they are, in a way, kind of bookmarking the great transitions, kind of rites of passage that we go through, during the course of our lives. So we incarnate, we kind of come in to what they call the great stream in the I Ching, and we then have a set of rites of passages from kind of coming of age to marriage and partnership, to things like midlife and then old age, and then of course we get to the second set of gateways, which is all about transitions. Now this could be into the realm of spirit, but equally it could be a transition into another phase of life. So we're going to have a look at the 11/11 gateway with this in mind, bearing in mind that this energy is taking us back, certainly astrologically, to the 4/4 gateway that we had back in April. So we'll see that when we come to the astrology. So I don't know whether you can see on this this calendar. This is my astrological software calendar, and if we have a look at the week of the 8th to the 14th of November, this is really the week where we've got that 11/11 portal slap bang in the middle. Now what's interesting astrologically is that we begin the week with a Venus-Mars opposition. So in a way we are returning to the energies of kind of June, when Venus was retrograde, and we had some of those very difficult encounters between Venus and Mars, when Mars was still in Pisces. Now Mars is retrograde until the 14th, so Mars will actually station at the end of this week, and so that's kind of interesting. So I kind of feel as though in a way this is clearing out or kind of consolidating or integrating energies or situations that we've been dealing with in terms of relationships from June. Now this is backed up by the fact that on the 12th of November we've got the final Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. So the first two passes of this happened very close to the 444 gateway in April. And then we had a second pass around about the 29th of June, so at a similar kind of time to when Venus was retrograde. And then the final pass is the 12th of November. So for me, this particular set of aspects has to do with major shifts and changes. It also has to do with a kind of an expansion of awareness, so awakening. And of course that can happen in the heart space as much as it can happen in the sort of the crown and the third eye. And then I also feel that it's very much about major transformation, which I think, you know, has been a theme since Mercury first sort of entered into Scorpio back in October, and of course Mercury will re-enter Scorpio this week as well. That will be happening on the 10th, so just before that the 1111 portal. Now the other interesting thing about this particular gateway is we've got kind of two sets of energies sort of happening. On the one hand, we've got quite a dreamy aspect between the Sun and Neptune, which happens on the 10th of November, and this can really kind of bring through messages from spirit through the dreamscape, through inspiration, through meditation, and through any kind of creative pursuit where we're kind of engaging the right brain. So that happens on the 10th, and then we've got conversely this sort of polarizing energy of Venus opposition to Mars, and for me this is about having to reconcile polarities or opposites, finding the sort of common denominator between that Aries Libra polarity, which we've been dealing with since the beginning of October, when we had that Aries full moon right at the beginning of October, and then we had the Libra new moon kind of mid-month. So this is an extension to me of those polarities, and they might kind of come into stark awareness, particularly within the sphere of romantic relationships, because Venus and Mars are really about the divine masculine, divine feminine in the realm of romantic relationships. So this is about the sacral and the root chakras. And then with Mercury in Scorpio, we're really kind of being asked to dive deep, to take our awareness and root it deeply into the earth. And I do feel like part of the message of this 1111 portal is going to be around crystals, crystal healing, crystal structures, crystals being activated. So here I feel that the Scorpio-Taurus axis, which has also been active since April, is really kind of asking us to root deeply into the earth and to help the earth to kind of transform with the earth. So this for me is a very strong axis of kind of death and life and rebirth and the cycles of nature, but also the transformative and telluric energies that are within the earth, the kind of snake energies of the earth, which of course are mirrored in our Kundalini energy. So I feel like there's a lot of potential here for healing, particularly within the physical body and in some of the vehicles, the etheric and body and so on. And then the other big theme, of course, is the Sun then moving on to make a series of very, very positive aspects to that stellium that's in Capricorn, so Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto. So I think again this is about taking that energy that has been activated kind of since that that final Halloween blue moon that we had at the end of October, and it's continuing to work with it. So here this is very much solar energy, and of course solar energy is associated with the higher self, with higher forms of consciousness, as well as I say, the solar plexus as well. So that also could be an area that we're kind of working with now, but again it's integrating it into earth energies, because of course Capricorn is an earth sign, so it's trying to sort of integrate and synergize between kind of, you know, crown and third eye energy on the one hand, those chakras, and of course the ones above that that connect us with our higher selves, and then the more telluric energies associated particularly with Pluto, which is very much about roots. It's about what's below the earth. So this is really, in a way, if you want to talk in I Ching language, this is kind of activating the fire-water polarity, which is certainly within that cosmology is what they call the vertical elements. So these are the elements that connect heaven and earth. So lots happening on lots of different dimensions, and I'm hoping that this will come through, you know, when we do the I Ching reading. But let's see, you know, what comes through. So let's get into the reading itself. I've had a beautiful piece of amethyst crystal sitting on the I Ching cards. So what I'm going to do is the same as I did last time. I'm going to shuffle the cards and find our first hexagram, and then I'm going to use these dice, the first one to establish how many changing lines we have, and then the second one for which lines in particular we're looking at. So let's see what messages want to come through for this 1111 portal. I also recommend, if you're interested in this sort of astrological weather, to either follow my my WordPress website, because then you'll get emailed when I update the cosmic weather forecast, or to follow me on Instagram, because I do post fairly regularly what I call Astro Insights. And again, that's sort of a look at the weather. I try to sort of have a look at the week in advance, but if something is coming up that I feel is really important, then I'll do a specific post on that. Wow. So our first hexagram is 44. So let's have a look and see what the overall energy of that particular hexagram is. Interesting that it is 4-4. As I say, there are links between the energy now, particularly that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and that 444 gateway back in April, on the 4th of April. So again, I do recommend you, I'll link it in the description box below, the article that I did, the post that I did on the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction back in April, because I think you might find it useful in terms of connecting events that happened back then with themes that are happening now. Okay, so this is called Coming to Meet, and it's so interesting. So it says distractions, escapes and infatuations could create illusory and unpleasant situations. In order to prevent stumbling, taking precautions, reflecting and analyzing current circumstances is advisable. Do not establish ties, agreements or alliances unless they are well considered. So I think that's really, really interesting if we consider the second pass of that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which happened in June, and I feel that this is pointing us back to Venus retrograde. So I do recommend, if you haven't already watched the video that I did on YouTube about Venus retrograde, because I think that really encapsulates all the important themes that were activated, over the months of kind of May and June in particular, with regards to relationships. So a lot of them had to do with things like love addiction, where we also may kind of numb out, where we may sort of get a little bit into kind of habits around codependence, or where we may just not, where we may kind of sort of kid ourselves a little bit about, not seeing red flags, for example, within a particular relationship, or, just get stuck. So we kind of start hankering after somebody that, you know, potentially wasn't really good for us in the first place, or you know, who may not be coming back, and that way we can get a little bit stuck. So interesting themes, but let's get more information with the changing lines, because that will tell us, that will give us a lot more specific information. So how many changing lines in relation to this particular hexagram? I mean, yeah, it's hexagram. 1. Okay, so 1 changing line. Right, which line are we talking about? Line 2. Interesting. So line 2, and of course, as I said, the 1111 breaks down to 2. So lots of 2s in this reading, lots of 2s and 4s. Interesting. Okay, so I'm just going to pause the video while I find the corresponding card for the hexagram that follows. So just bear with me. Okay guys, so I've now got the second hexagram, and isn't it interesting that both are double numbers? So very, very interesting. So we've got 4-4 here, which is actually the number of coupling. So this is very much about kind of the coming together of masculine and feminine energy in the romantic or the sexual sense, and then this is the number of course of mastery, 33. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I wanted to stop and look a little bit more in depth at hexagram 44, because it is actually, it's all about you know, kind of love and romantic encounters, and the energy of Eros, I would say, to a large extent, the energy of Eros and Psyche. So Stephen Carter actually describes this energy in a really wonderful way. He talks about this as coupling is the appearance of the fate announced by an oracular message, and he describes it as being the royal bride, her appearance at the borders, and her journey to the sacred marriage that will produce an heir and renew the time. Now, what I find fascinating is that the royal bride is going to meet the king, and from this marriage we're going to have you know, an heir produced. So it's very alchemical, actually. It's very similar to me to this idea of the marriage of the sun and the moon, the sun being the king, of course, and then the moon being the queen. And from that coupling we get a third thing, which is then the kind of Christic energy of you know, creation, really. Now what's fascinating is the way he describes this particular energy, this particular archetype. So he says she is the strong or invigorating woman. So this is not a sort of a young Psyche kind of Persephone type of energy. This is more of a queen energy. So he describes her as being queen, empress, mistress, ruler, anima figure, the one who distributes the fates. So a very, very powerful, almost a high priestess kind of a figure, mixed in with the empress. So this is not a virginal energy. This is a very this is a divine feminine energy in its full power. So it's almost combining the moon with Venus in an interesting way here. So he says she symbolizes the return of the feminine power of desire, joy, beauty, the ability to manifest and to take pleasure in life. And this is a big, big theme if we think about that Taurus-Scorpio axis, which is all about fertility, sexual energy, and abundance, essentially. So we really are working with that Kundalini energy in this particular hexagram. And then he goes on and he says, she brings strange encounters with a spirit, an ancestor, a king. She presides over the so-called River Mountain Festival. So again, it's this idea of above and below. And all forms of coupling and mating, the brief encounters when men and women meet and take joy in each other. So she also presides over the autumn marriages and the omen of fertility, the bin ritual, which is known as fish in the wrapping, and suggests the willow world of sexuality, symbolized by melons and creeping vines. Now this symbolism has come up such a lot, not only in my last forecast that I did for the the last moon phase that we had in Taurus, I think. But it takes us back to, again, to April, mid-April, when we had, I think it was a new moon in Taurus. And so we are talking about that new moon in Taurus that we had in April, and then the full moon in Taurus that we had at the end of October, that October Halloween blue moon. So I think that this energy is really keying into those two lunar cycles, which almost form a pair. So again, we've got this idea of a kind of a gateway, you know, the gateway that sort of opened in April with that new moon in Taurus, and the closing of gateway, so a completion of a cycle almost with this energy. So really what it's talking about is divine feminine energy, which I think fits very well with what I was saying about the earth and the telluric energies, as well as crystalline energies. And of course crystalline energies can hold light, and that comes from the sort of the solar, the masculine solar kind of, you know, principle. So it is a kind of a marriage in a way between those two energies. And of course you can also do that with water, but here, you know, because of the Scorpio-Taurus axis, I think you know, the sort of crystalline earth sort of iteration is far more powerful. And then so he goes on and he says the great injunction here with this powerful woman, this force, this lady of fate, is not to grasp the woman. In other words, not to become attached or to try to control this energy. It's a very powerful feminine energy, and it says don't take the queen by force, but rather help her on her journey to the king and the royal marriage. So helping her towards that chemical marriage, that sort of alchemical conjunction, if you like, of energies that then allows for something new to be created. So this is how we manifest, essentially, is we take those kind of polar masculine and feminine energies, and you know, they kind of come together, they meet in the middle, and from that comes the third thing, the triangle, that I talked about I think back at the June eclipse, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really bringing together a lot of themes from many of the lunar cycles that we've had during 2020 in a beautiful way. And then let's look at the changing lines. So for hexagram 44, we've got changing line at 2, and this is a very interesting hexagram, actually. So 9 at the second is coupled, fish in the willow wrapping. This is not a mistake. Hospitality is not advantageous. So it says it is right not to extend hospitality. Stay quiet and withdrawn. Your ideas have borne fruit and the womb is full. They need quiet and intimacy. It won't help you to be or to receive a guest. So I think what it's kind of saying is that the second line is almost after the coupling, where the womb has been impregnated. So you could take this literally, you know, or kind of figuratively. So for example, if we talk about this in a creative level, you have received inspiration and you're now kind of ruminating, you're cooking that energy, you're working with it, you're thinking about it, you're letting it process within your you know, within your psyche, so that something new can be born from it. So here it's kind of saying, you know, the interaction is over. Now you need to sort of withdraw and allow the ideas to bear fruit. So retreat and nourish the growing creative force. Fascinating stuff. So really, really interesting. So I think it's kind of talking about, you know, brief encounters. This is something that of course comes up a lot in the context of very powerfully erotically charged, you know, encounters that a lot of people characterize as being sort of twin flame connections. I would say it's probably just the meeting of somebody who has a lot of the opposite qualities to you. So astrologically, somebody who's got you've got a lot of oppositions to in your chart, that really sort of creates this magnetic pull, you know, towards kind of opposites. And this spark, this charge, creates a lot of energy, which you can then use in a constructive way, not necessarily to try and hold on to the connection, because obviously with that amount of energy, those types of connections are often short-lived, but they serve their purpose, and then the idea is to go away and to integrate the activations and the awakenings that it's kind of caused in you as a kind of catalyst, or to kind of process what the encounters taught you on some level, or what it's kind of, you know, what gateways, if we want to talk, say, human design, what gateways has that person activated in you, and what does that then allow you to do that perhaps was not written into your original human design. Very, very interesting energy. And then we move on to hexagram 33. So this energy is all about retreating. So again, I think just reiterating that second line, which was kind of, you have got everything that you can out of a particular encounter, and now it's time to sort of withdraw and almost, you know, kind of gestate. Now you're in that second phase of manifestation, where you really need things to sort of to ripen, and they often will only bear fruit in their own time, you know, within sort of divine timing. So hexagram 33 here is about withdrawing and concealing yourself, retreating, pulling back in order to advance later. So it portrays a pig, which is a sign of wealth and good fortune, and the sign for a walkway. It suggests satisfaction, luck, and wealth through withdrawing. So this is, again, it's yin energy. If we think about it, divine feminine energy is yin energy, and again, what we're being asked to do is submit to the yin energy, submit to you know, not pursuing things actively, to sort of working within the energetic realms to achieve what it is that we, you know, we want. So Kasha says, this is a time to hide yourself, to withdraw from contacts, and to stay concealed. Acting in a small way will bring you success, so do not insist on your own ideas or try to have your own way. Do not get emotionally entangled. In seclusion you can prepare for a better time. You cannot stay where you are. Retire and be coupled with heaven. Decline involvements and refuse connections. Keep people at a distance, not through hate, but through a demanding integrity that inspires awe. Be adaptable. Immerse yourself in this situation and endure. Knowing when to retire is a very great thing. Interesting. So yeah, so he talks about how withdrawing from involvements contains the hidden possibility of the conjunction of the two primal powers, which is hexagram 44 coupling. So I think what it's really sort of saying is it's taking us back to that retrograde Venus energy, which was all about kind of not necessarily always literalizing everything, you know, kind of understanding that sometimes you meet people purely so that they can awaken something in you, they can activate something in you, catalyze something in you, which you then go away and work with sort of on your own. And I feel that that's the message that's coming through quite strongly. Now, overall, I do think that this ties into the overall energies of November, which are a little bit subdued, which are calling for kind of retraction and into introspection, particularly you know, once Mercury goes back into Scorpio. It's reiterating those themes that I talked about, you know, when Mercury first went into Scorpio in October, which is all about kind of retreating into oneself, to sort of seeing on the inner planes. And so that's what I feel we're doing. We're kind of, you may have an encounter in the 3D with a person, for example, and this then catalyzes something in the etheric realm, so in the spiritual realms. And then the key is not to then project back onto that relationship or that situation. The thing is to see it for its symbolic value, and then to sort of withdraw and work with that energy, you know, emotionally, psychologically, and sort of energetically, in order to integrate information and to transform, because Scorpio is very, very transformative energy, and with that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, you know, there's enormous potential for shifts here. So I really feel as though on a collective level we are all working on relationships, particularly purging anything toxic. We're kind of closing out cycles around toxicity that began with that Venus retrograde in May, June. So we're closing that out, and then I feel when Mars moves into direct motion at the end of the week, then we move into a much more active phase, where we're kind of working with things like career and you know, kind of goals in the realm of achievements. And here I'm thinking also on the collective level, you know, if we look at, for example, what's happened with the American elections, So it's kind of coming together with others of like mind and sort of pursuing things on that level. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull a couple of trinkets just to see what additional messages we get through in relation to these two hexagrams. So let's pull a couple for 44. Interesting. Yes, so very, very clear message. Message from the Divine Feminine coming in. So I definitely think this is saying, you know, prepare for downloads. And that's why it's going to be important not to spend too much time socializing in that idea of the second line, not entertaining guests or not being a guest yourself. So really with kind of withdrawing and becoming receptive to the messages that want to come through from the Divine Feminine energy. And I think here it's not always necessarily going to be from above. I feel like the messages are going to be coming through from Mother Earth. So very, very interesting. Beautiful. So yes, with the second hexagram, I'm going to put these here so you can see them more clearly. So we've got the letter and the crane, which is of course about maternal energy. It's about positive changes, but it's also about maternal energy. So I really feel like this is a message from Mother Earth, from Mother Nature. And then we've got the bouquet and the birds. Again, wonderful that all this energy is related to nature. So here we've got the bouquet of flowers and we've got the two birds in the tree. So I really feel as though together this is a beautiful message, beautiful communications. So kind of really seeing things in a new light, getting through some beautiful messages from our spirit guides and helpers. And perhaps this can also be inspiration, creative inspiration. So I think enormous potential here for manifestation and abundance, not just in terms of physical stuff, you know, goods and that kind of thing, but really I think creatively this is going to be a very, very profoundly creative time. So that's, I think, something to look forward to. Yeah, really, really interesting energies. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. Do let me know in the comments below if it's resonated, and do go and check out, as I say, the new moon forecast that I did back in April, because I think there will be strong links to this reading, as well as that October blue moon, that Halloween blue moon reading. And then the Lionsgate portal was the last I Ching reading that I did, so you may also want to have a look at that. And actually, before I go, let's see what hexagram 44 is coupled with, because this will give us the information about the gates. So this is part of gate 43 and 44. So Kasha says this involves you in the announcement of an oracle at a critical moment and the arrival of the fate thus announced. So yes, so I kind of feel like if you want to go back to the 444 portal, to those blog posts that I did back then and the readings that I did back then, because I think what you're going to find, certainly I found at the October, that Halloween Hunter's moon, that a lot of what was kind of being started or portended back then was realized at that October 31 moon. And we're still in that energy. Actually, we're still in that waning moon cycle until we get to the new moon in Scorpio, which will happen I think early next week. So yes, definitely go back and check out those. So it embodies a site of radical transformation, a great transition that connects you to the force of the dragon. Fascinating. So a great transition, I think, echoing that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and the great dragon, of course, being the creative, that primordial yang energy, which is divine masculine energy. So I kind of feel like that this portal is the divine feminine, and she's coming into balance with the divine masculine energy, which was quite strong, I would say, to an extent at the Lionsgate portal, although that was also quite strongly feminine energy in the sense of, you know, the field, I think was what came through there. We had hexagram 2, if I'm not mistaken. But I really feel like this is kind of coming into balance with the masculine energy. So really, really beautiful. So an oracle from April that's now being fulfilled. And so look, go back and look at prophecies from that time. And then secondly, this idea of the dragon force, which is actually what I said at the beginning of the reading. So this idea of heaven and earth, of the dragon energy being the masculine, and then the feminine energy being the field, but it's also associated with the snake goddess. So this is sort of the snake energy moving in a kind of horizontal way, and the creative is obviously moving in the sky. So fascinating. If you think about water, it actually does look like a snake, does it not? And then we've got the dragon that breathes fire, you know, in the air. So absolutely fascinating and beautiful as always. Yes, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll catch you again soon for my new moon forecast.